Most people think marriages fall apart because of one unforgettable moment. An affair, a betrayal, a devastating argument that changes everything overnight. But many relationships don't end that way. Sometimes, a marriage slowly changes through tiny habits that don't look dangerous at first. A hidden purchase, a stressful bill nobody wants to discuss, a couple sitting in the same room carrying completely different fears about money. And over time, those small moments begin changing the emotional atmosphere inside the relationship. Quietly. Because money is rarely just about money. It's often about emotional safety, appreciation, stress, control, resentment, fear, trust. And many couples don't realize the damage until emotional distance already starts feeling normal. In the beginning of most relationships, money usually feels lighter. Couples dream together, plan together, talk about future homes, vacations, children, and the kind of life they want to build side by side. Even if they don't have much money yet, there's still often a feeling of, we're figuring this out together. But over time, life becomes heavier. Bills increase, responsibilities grow, unexpected expenses appear, children arrive. Stress quietly settles into everyday routines. And without realizing it, many couples slowly stop experiencing money as something shared. Instead, money becomes pressure, silence, emotional exhaustion, unspoken resentment. What makes this especially dangerous is that many of these habits look completely normal from the outside. The couple still goes to dinner, still posts family photos, still functions normally around friends. But internally, emotional distance has already started forming through repeated financial tension and emotional disconnection. Because financial problems inside relationships are rarely only about numbers. They're often about whether someone feels appreciated, whether someone feels controlled, whether someone feels emotionally safe telling the truth, whether someone secretly feels alone. And once those emotional foundations weaken, even small financial situations can start triggering much deeper pain. So today, we're talking about 7 money habits that quietly damage marriages over time, even in relationships that still look completely fine on the surface. And as you listen, pay attention to something important. Sometimes the most dangerous habits are not the loud ones. They're the patterns couples slowly get used to. Sign 1. One person handles everything. In many marriages, one person slowly becomes responsible for all the finances. At first, it usually feels practical. One partner is simply better with numbers, more organized, more interested in budgeting or planning ahead. So the other person steps back and says, "You're better at this than I am." And for a while, everything seems fine. Bills get paid, accounts stay organized, life keeps moving. But emotionally, something subtle begins changing over time. One person quietly becomes responsible for carrying all the financial anxiety alone. They're the one checking account balances late at night, the one mentally calculating future expenses while standing in line at the grocery store, the one worrying about emergencies nobody else is even thinking about yet. Meanwhile, the other partner slowly disconnects from the emotional reality of the household finances. And eventually, the relationship stops feeling emotionally equal. One person feels overwhelmed, the other feels excluded. You can often see this dynamic in very small moments. A husband staring silently at banking notifications while everyone else sleeps. A wife nervously asking if they can afford something small before buying it. Nobody is trying to hurt each other. But over time, one person begins feeling unsupported, while the other quietly feels powerless. And that imbalance slowly creates emotional distance. The dangerous part is that many couples normalize this dynamic for years. Eventually, financial responsibility stops feeling shared. It starts feeling lonely. But interestingly, the healthiest solution is not always a better spreadsheet or stricter budgeting system. Sometimes healing begins with something much smaller, a monthly money date. One calm conversation where both people sit down together without blame, simply asking, "What's been stressing you out lately?" Because many couples don't actually need perfection. They just need to feel like they're carrying life together again. Sign 2. Small secret spending. Most financial secrecy doesn't begin with massive betrayal. It begins with tiny moments that seem emotionally harmless. A package quietly brought into the house. A deleted banking notification. A purchase explained too quickly before the other person even asks about it. Sometimes someone casually says, "I bought this a while ago." And individually, these moments seem incredibly small. But psychologically, they often reveal something much deeper happening underneath the relationship. Because people usually hide spending long before the spending itself becomes dangerous. What they're often hiding is emotional discomfort. Sometimes they're trying to avoid criticism. Sometimes they're exhausted from arguments. Sometimes they simply want one small area of life that still feels emotionally theirs. And eventually, secrecy becomes emotionally easier than honesty. That's where the damage quietly begins, not in the money itself, but in the growing belief that openness no longer feels emotionally safe. You can often feel this shift during ordinary conversations. One person becomes defensive immediately. The other becomes suspicious immediately. Even before the discussion truly begins, both people are already emotionally preparing for conflict. And over time, both partners slowly stop being fully transparent with each other. Not necessarily because they're dishonest people, but because emotionally, hiding feels less exhausting than explaining. And once secrecy becomes emotionally comfortable, trust slowly weakens in the background of everyday life. The good news is that this pattern is often repairable much earlier than couples think. Sometimes honesty returns when conversations stop sounding like interrogations. When people feel emotionally safe enough to say, "I bought this because I was stressed," without immediately feeling judged for it. Sign 3. Keeping score. One of the fastest ways resentment enters a marriage is through invisible scorekeeping. And the dangerous part is, it rarely sounds dramatic at first. It sounds normal. "I paid for dinner last time." "I've been covering the bills all month." "I work harder." "You spend more than I do." At first, these comments may even sound practical. But emotionally, something deeper is happening underneath. Both people slowly begin measuring sacrifice. Who contributes more? Who works harder? Who deserves more appreciation? And eventually, the relationship starts feeling less like a team and more like an emotional competition. You can often feel this tension during completely ordinary moments. A couple sitting silently after discussing expenses. Someone opening a banking app with visible frustration. A small conversation about groceries suddenly becoming emotionally intense, because the money itself usually isn't the real issue anymore. The real issue is emotional recognition. People want to feel appreciated, respected, seen. And when someone quietly feels their sacrifices are constantly unnoticed, resentment slowly begins building underneath everyday interactions. Over time, love starts feeling transactional instead of supportive. One person thinks, "I always give more." The other quietly thinks, "Nothing I do is ever enough." And eventually, both people begin feeling emotionally alone inside the same relationship. Have you ever noticed how some couples stop sounding like partners and slowly start sounding like co-workers managing stress together? That shift usually happens much earlier than people realize. The healthiest couples are rarely the ones who split everything perfectly evenly. They're usually the ones who continue making each other feel appreciated, even during stressful seasons of life. Sign 4. Lifestyle inflation without conversation. Some couples slowly become financially successful, while emotionally growing exhausted together. At first, upgrading life feels exciting. A nicer apartment, a newer car, more expensive vacations, better schools, higher standards of living. And none of those things are inherently bad. But many couples never stop to ask an important question. What kind of life are we actually trying to build? Instead, they continue upgrading because everyone around them seems to be doing the same thing. And social media quietly intensifies that pressure. Sometimes couples stop spending money to enjoy life. They start spending money to look successful, to look happy, to look stable, to prove something online, even while feeling emotionally exhausted offline. A beautiful vacation photo gets posted. Smiling faces, perfect lighting, perfect captions. But later that same night, the couple quietly argues about the cost of the trip back in the hotel room. And moments like this happen more often than people think, because many modern relationships are carrying two pressures at once: maintaining real life and maintaining the appearance of a happy life. Over time, the relationship slowly becomes centered around maintaining lifestyle instead of maintaining emotional connection. One person quietly checks account balances late at night. The other feels guilty every time they spend money. Both people become more anxious, more emotionally reactive, more mentally exhausted. But externally, everything still looks successful. That's what makes this pattern so dangerous. For many couples don't realize their lifestyle is emotionally draining them until peace inside the relationship quietly disappears. And sometimes healing begins with a surprisingly uncomfortable conversation. Are we actually happy, or are we just trying to look successful? Sign 5. Avoiding money conversations. Sometimes the most dangerous sign in a marriage is not conflict, it's avoidance. Some couples slowly stop discussing money altogether because every conversation already feels emotionally exhausting before it even begins. One person wants to discuss debt. The other changes the subject immediately. Bills continue arriving. Stress continues building. But the conversations disappear. We'll talk later. Not tonight. I'm too tired. And eventually, silence becomes part of the relationship itself. The problem is, avoiding financial conversations rarely removes financial stress. It only removes emotional teamwork. Underneath that, silence is usually fear. Fear of conflict, fear of judgment, fear of disappointing the other person. Sometimes one partner already feels blamed before they even speak. Sometimes the other feels emotionally shut out, no matter how gently they try to communicate. And eventually, both people stop trying, not because they no longer care, but because discussing money starts feeling emotionally unsafe. And that emotional hopelessness can quietly become more damaging than the financial problem itself. But sometimes, healing starts with lowering the emotional temperature of the conversation itself. Not, we need to fix everything tonight. Just, can we talk honestly for 10 minutes without attacking each other? Because healthy relationships are not built on avoiding difficult conversations. They're built on feeling emotionally safe enough to survive those conversations together. Sign 6. Using money to control emotions. Some couples slowly stop solving emotional problems. Instead, they start spending around them. After arguments, someone buys gifts, orders expensive food, books, vacations, shops impulsively online. And temporarily, the emotional tension softens. The atmosphere feels lighter for a moment. But the original emotional wound underneath never truly gets addressed. Because money slowly becomes a substitute for vulnerability. A substitute for apologies, emotional honesty, difficult conversations. You can often recognize this pattern in relationships that appear comfortable from the outside, but emotionally disconnected underneath. The couple still functions normally, still posts photos together, still buys things together. But emotionally, both people quietly feel unseen. One person spends money whenever stress appears, because buying something creates temporary emotional relief. The other accepts gifts instead of emotional accountability, because conflict feels exhausting. And over time, both people slowly become disconnected from the real emotional issues inside the relationship. Money becomes emotional anesthesia, not healing, just temporary numbness. And sometimes the most meaningful repair has nothing to do with buying anything at all. Sometimes it sounds like, "I know you're upset. I want to understand what actually hurt you." Because emotional closeness cannot be purchased long-term. It has to be rebuilt through emotional honesty. Sign 7. Different money values. Perhaps the deepest financial conflict inside marriage comes from something many couples never fully understand about each other. Different emotional meanings attached to money itself. One person saves aggressively because they grew up surrounded by instability and fear. The other spends more freely because they learned life is unpredictable and meant to be enjoyed while possible. One person sees saving as safety. The other sees spending as freedom. Neither person is necessarily wrong, but emotionally, both people begin interpreting each other through their own fears. The saver sees irresponsibility. The spender sees control. One partner feels unsafe financially. The other feels emotionally trapped. And eventually, every financial discussion becomes emotionally loaded with years of personal history. Childhood experiences, family stress, shame, fear, identity. That's why many money arguments inside marriage feel emotionally larger than the actual numbers involved. Because people are rarely only protecting money. They're protecting their emotional sense of security in the world. And when couples fail to understand the emotional meaning underneath each other's financial behavior, they slowly stop understanding each other too. Sometimes one of the most powerful questions a couple can ask each other is, "What did money feel like in your house growing up?" Because many adult financial behaviors are actually emotional survival patterns learned much earlier in life. And understanding that can completely change the way couples see each other. Emotional payoff. Most marriages are not destroyed by one financial disaster overnight. They slowly weaken through repeated emotional experiences surrounding money. The secrecy, the resentment, the silence, the pressure, the feeling that honesty no longer feels emotionally safe. Because eventually, financial stress stops feeling like a money problem. It starts feeling like emotional loneliness. But the hopeful part is this. Many couples do not fail because they stopped loving each other. They fail because stress slowly replaced emotional safety. And emotional safety can be rebuilt. Sometimes slowly, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes through very small conversations that seem insignificant at first. A monthly check-in, an honest confession, one calm conversation without blame. Because in healthy relationships, the goal is not perfect finances. It's making sure both people still feel safe telling the truth. And maybe that's the real question underneath all of this. Not, how much money does this couple have? But, do these two people still feel emotionally safe facing life together? And out of these 7 habits, which one do you think quietly damages relationships the most? Sometimes the scariest patterns are the ones people slowly start calling normal.